What's up, guys? Andrew here with the TBSG podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the Book of Frank by C.A. Conrad, kind of tying that into what we've read and talked about before with Shadowboxing. Gabe is going to start off with that.
As we have discussed in earlier podcasts, Joseph Rios incorporates Spanglish, violence, and profanity in his writing that reflects both his character and adolescent experiences. Before we read from C.A. Conrad's Book of Frank, we want to clarify the type of identities and experiences that define him. C.A. Conrad comes from rural Pennsylvania. As a gay man, he was bullied a lot growing up, and he experienced greater troubles later in life when his boyfriend, Earth, was murdered and there was no justice. Conrad uses unique rituals and semantics to hone his craft. Many may consider him to be a sort of hippie or free spirit because of his values and practices. But this background knowledge will give us greater perspective as Jose reads.
In the Book of Frank, C.A. Conrad writes, "Mother's long arm, used to make a tick-tick-ticking sound, moving in a circle, faster than the shorter arm. On the bus, a man asked Frank for the time. He stared at his watch, held by the memory of mother. When he looked up, the bus was empty. His beard was 10 feet long."
C.A. Conrad's poems in the Book of Frank are particularly different from Joseph Rios' poems in Shadowboxing because of the type of languages that they use. Joseph Rios uses a lot of Spanglish throughout his poetry, mainly because his poetry is a coming-of-age story. He talks about his Chicano adolescence and how he grew up in California and what he experienced in his childhood. He discusses things that are very significant to his culture, such as farmhands working in unsafe environments, immigrant workers and how they're mistreated, and the difficulties he faced being a Hispanic teenager in the United States. The Book of Frank mainly talks about a storyline, and it really pertains to Frank and his day-to-day experiences. The poem that Jose read is very different from the type of poetry that we read in Joseph Rios's book, because Rios likes to use a lot of cursing, a lot of harsh words and harsh phrases, because that's the type of upbringing that he had. The Book of Frank is more stylistically pertains to the type of upbringing that C.A. Conrad had, and for that reason they're really different. They are similar in the sense that both of them really have a lot of meaning to the author, and that they embody the author within the text, and they take a very unique approach in the sense that while the poem doesn't have a meaning by itself, it has a greater meaning as a whole with the rest of the poems in the book.
All right, guys, and that brings us to the end of episode 4 of the TBSG podcast. Hope you enjoyed, hope you learned a little something, and we will see you next week. See you guys.